This is the famous quote, from Mandela that he actually didn't say, but someone attributed it to him that, first they ignore you. So from 2009 to 15, they ignored us, right? Bunch of nerds and geeks with your magic internet money. Yeah, knock yourself out. Then they laugh at you. So 16 to 21, they're like, ha, 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 a bunch of nerds and geeks. Yeah, whatever. Then they fight you. 2022, and I think to 2027, which is interestingly right around the time of that bust that I talked about in 2028, I think they're going to fight really, really hard.
The world hit an inflection point in 2008, which was the global debt crisis. And we get the ramifications that spread on in 2012, the European crisis. And that continues to rumble on to this day. What happened back then was something remarkable. Is if we think about how GDP is created, the growth of economies, it's population growth, productivity, and debt growth. We've had aging populations in most of the Western world. The US is less aging than others, but still aging. But debt growth in 2008 stopped, basically. And we had a debt jubilee. Now, debt jubilees, most people would think of, you forgive all the debts. We didn't. We did this magic trick, which we said, you don't need to pay the interest on the debt. We'll make it all zero. And every central bank around the world cut interest rates to zero. Okay, that created an opportunity for every government to refinance their debts. So they all refinance, and they refinance them in this 3 to 5 year time horizon. And that set off a cyclicality to the economy that we've never really seen before, that every 4 years we get economic weakness, the increases of the balance sheet and use of interest rates as they come to refinance the debt.
Second week of January-ish.
Okay.
I mean, do they push it one more time and go right down to the wire? I think the Ides of March. I think March 15th is the drop dead date. They either have to deny them or they are deemed effective. And I said, I think there's zero chance, when you should never say zero, but I think there's zero chance that BlackRock doesn't get approved. And so does it happen on the January 15th date, or do they wait till the March 15th date? I don't really know. I don't have any insight. But in both cases, it's before the halving, and you put that event in front of the halving. Ooh, fireworks, baby. I mean, look, we went from 10 to 60 in a matter of months when GBTC was buying in the last cycle and Saylor came on, and Elon was talking about maybe you could buy a Tesla with it. And then he changed his mind and went from 60 down to 30. And then Saylor bought more, and then we went back to 69. But that first pump from 10 to 60, when fair value was only 30, I mean, that was almost instantaneous. I mean, it was that same old. Everybody went home for Thanksgiving. They talked about it. People bought some more. Saylor came on TV. GBTC started pumping. I think $5 or $6 billion went in at a time when that market cap was much lower, and the rest is history. So is this one going to be bigger than that? Yeah, but we're starting with a bigger number. So the law of large numbers is hard, right? It's tougher to double a $700 billion asset than it is a $150 billion asset. Just is. The big banks love the fact that the futures ETF allows them to go naked short.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why we had this tremendous bear market. I mean, you go back to almost the exact day of the launch of the futures ETF was the top of the market in 21. Yeah. And look, if people can go naked short, they can manipulate the price. It's been happening in gold forever. Anytime you can create a paper asset with a futures contract, you have the opportunity to manipulate. So I will argue that commodities markets are more manipulated than Bitcoin market. And there are a lot of commodities ETFs. The VIX, oh my God, the VIX futures. I mean, that is a license to just rob people of their wealth. But that got approved, and it's got billions of dollars in it. So plenty of triple levered ETFs, which are horrible. Just the way they even calculate the rebalancing just robs people of their money. And yet those got approved. So something like a Bitcoin spot ETF or an Ethereum spot ETF, both of which allow you to actually own the physical asset. How could you not want that to happen? And the reason is because by approving it, you're acknowledging that it's real. And the big banks don't want us to acknowledge that it's real yet. And look, we saw the announcement this morning that JP Morgan has got this new private chain to help asset management companies, eliminate back office infrastructure expense and lower fees. Okay, great, but it's still a private chain, and it lacks all the benefits of all the things we want in a decentralized world. And they made a big announcement, and they're patting themselves on the back, and that's all great. But decentralized is better than centralized. And a decentralized future is where we are headed, but not without a fight.
It's become quite well known called the Everything Code. I found out that, in fact, the use of the central bank balance sheets was used to pay the interest on the debt from the previous cycle. And this will become relevant in a second. So they're monetizing the interest payments, which is pure debasement of currency. And debasement of currency means that the denominator, the purchasing power of that currency, goes down, and it makes the price of assets look like they're going up. But they're not really going up. When you divide, for example, the S&P 500 or gold or real estate by the Fed balance sheet, they've been flat since 2008. And I discovered within that process that only two assets actually have risen versus the debasement of currency. That was technology stocks and crypto. Both were in secular uptrends. So this, like clockwork business cycle, which is based around the debt refi cycle, happens to be exactly the same as the US election cycle. It also happens to be exactly the same as the Bitcoin halving cycle. So all of these cycles are at the same time every time. So here we are today. Today, we're at the bottom of the business cycle. This is the kind of recessionary era. Businesses are laying off staff. Inflation is starting to fall sharply. The forward-looking markets, technology and crypto, priced in a recession last year. And they've been recovering since because they've been following the forward-looking indicators of financial conditions and other things. Right now, stuff like the Russell 2000 and oil is living in the present day, which is slow economy. So they're at their lows. And everyone's like, what the hell is going on? Why are these tech stocks going up and everything else is going down? It's because they're forward-looking, as it is their job. So I've been very bullish. I saw the liquidity cycle, which is the key driver of all assets. The liquidity cycle is based around this interest rate cycle, which is based around this whole debt refi cycle. Liquidity started bottoming last year in October, November, December. And that gave us the signal to start getting long both crypto and technology. And that's been, phenomenally good. I mean, this year, the Nasdaq's up 45% and crypto is anywhere between 80 and 500% this year. And that's got people scratching their heads. But our forward-looking indicators of the business cycle suggest we're going into what is, right now we're in macro spring. So we've still got the problem remaining of that GDP formula. How do we pay for this bloody debt? Because it keeps going up. The higher interest rates go, the more bonds they have to issue, which is why I think they want to bring interest rates much lower than people expect by being so late in hiking, so they can undershoot and have the cover to paper over the cracks in the system yet again. And they'll use the commercial real estate and the banks as one of the excuses to do it, to start using the balance sheet. But we've still got the problems with the economy, is it's not growing fast enough to pay the interest on the debt. So if the economy on average is growing at 1.75%, and let's say interest payments on debt is about 2%, and the government's 100% of GDP in debt, that's all of GDP just to pay the debt. So what you need is to grow GDP. And to grow GDP, you either need the population to grow, well, that's not going to happen, or you need productivity to grow. That's technology. So productivity growth is what I'm really looking at and it's not this cycle story, but by 2030, we will see AI solve for both problems. AI and the robots are new demographics. They're new productive units in the workforce of infinite scale. So we can now have an infinite population of productive people in inverted commas, and that will start driving productivity. The next part of the equation is we need to bring the cost of energy per unit of output down. And it won't come out of fossil fuel markets, it'll come out of renewable energy plus nuclear energy. If you lower the cost, the average per dollar barrel of oil price over the last 60 years has been about $40, inflation adjusted. But if you change to a new source of energy or bring in other sources of energy to make an excess abundance of energy, and you bring it down to $40, at $10, that has a massive multiplier. So my big picture is we're about to go through an economic revolution, but we're not finished with the downside of slow economies, and that's going to mean more and more use of the balance sheets, ongoing increase in asset prices, and this ongoing cyclicality of the economy.